Welcome to Cocoa Club. Cocoa Club is a radio program put on by the Hotchkiss Library of Sharon and Robin Hood Radio. Tune in to WHDD 91.9 each week and join me, Mrs. Sam, for a short story, a poem, some cocoa, and a sweet dessert. The recipe for each dessert will be posted the week before so we can all try our hand in baking something new and enjoy it as a family while we listen to a story. Please join us on social media to post photos of how your recipe turned out or tell us what you thought about the story at facebook.com/Hotchkiss Library. This week we made sugar cookies and we'll be continuing the story, The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar by Roald Dahl. Roald Dahl was a British novelist, short story writer, poet, screenwriter, and wartime fighter pilot. As I said, this week is a little bit different because we're going to be continuing the story of The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. If you'd like to find last week's episode where we began the story, you can do so on Robin Hood Radio's website. And now, we're going to continue with the story of Imrat Khan, the man who could see without his eyes. In the living room, I got out paper and pencils so that I could make notes. I have a sort of private shorthand of my own that I use for taking down the medical history of patients, and with it I am able to record most of what a person says if he doesn't speak too quickly. I think I got it just about everything that Imrat Khan said to me that evening, word for word, and here it is. I'll give it to you exactly as he spoke it. I am an Indian, a Hindu, said Imrat Khan, and I was born in Angkur, in Kashmir State, in 1905. My family is poor, and my father worked as a ticket inspector on the railway. When I was a small boy of 13, an Indian conjurer comes to our school and gives us a performance. His name, I remember, is Professor Moore. All conjurers in India call themselves Professor, and his tricks are very good. I am tremendously impressed. I think it is real magic. I feel, how shall I call it? I feel a powerful wish to learn about this magic myself, so 2 days later I run away from home, determined to find and to follow my new hero, Professor Moore. I take all my savings, 14 rupees, and only the clothes I am wearing. I am wearing a white dhoti and sandals. This is 1918, and I am 13 years old. I find out that Professor Moore has gone to Lahore, 200 miles away, so all alone I take a ticket 3rd class, and I get on the train and follow him. In Lahore I discover the professor. He is working at his conjuring in a very cheap type show. I tell him of my admiration, and offer myself to him as his assistant. He accepts me. My pay? Ah, yes. My pay is 8 annas a day. The professor teaches me to do the linking rings trick, and my job is to stand on the street before the theater dressed in funny clothes, doing the linking rings and calling for the people to come in and see the show. For 6 whole weeks this works very fine. It is much better than going to school. But then, what a terrible bombshell! I receive one suddenly. It comes to me that there is no real magic in Professor Moore, that all is trickery and quickness of hand. Immediately, the professor is no longer my hero. I lose every bit of interest in my job, but at the same time my whole mind becomes filled with a very strong longing. I long above all things to find out about the real magic, and discover something about the strange power which is called yoga. To do this, I must find a yogi who is willing to let me become his disciple. This is not going to be easy. True yogis do not grow on trees. There are very few of them in the whole of India. Also, they are fanatically religious people. Therefore, if I am to have success in finding a teacher, I too would have to pretend to be a very religious man. No, I'm not actually religious, and because of that, I am what you would call a bit of a cheat. I wanted to acquire yoga powers purely for selfish reasons. I wanted to use these powers to get fame and fortune. Now, this was something the true yogi would despise more than anything in the world. In fact, true yogi believes that any yogi who misuses his powers will die an early and sudden death. A yogi must never perform in public. He must practice his art only in absolute privacy and as a religious service. Otherwise, he will be smitten to death. This I do not believe, and I still don't. So, now my search for a yogi instructor begins. I leave Professor Moore and I go to a town called Amritsar in Punjab, where I join a traveling theater company. I have to make a living while I'm searching for the secret, and already I have had success in amateur acting at my school. So for 3 years I travel with this theater group all over Punjab, and by the end of it, when I am 16.5 years old, I am playing top of the bill. All the time I am saving money, and now I have altogether a very great sum, 2,000 rupees. It is at that moment that I hear the news of a man called Banerjee. This Banerjee, it is said, is one of the truly great yogis of India, and he possesses extraordinary yoga powers. Above all, people are telling of how he has acquired the rare power of levitation, so that when he prays his whole body leaves the ground and becomes suspended in the air 18 inches from the soil. Aha, I think. This surely is the man for me. This Banerjee is the one I must seek. So at once I take my savings and I leave the theater company and make my way to Rishikesh on the banks of the Ganges, where the rumor says the Banerjee is living. For 6 months I search for the Banerjee. Where is he? Where? Where is the Banerjee? Ah, yes, they say, in Rishikesh. Banerjee has certainly been in town, but that is a while ago, and even then no one saw him. And now? Now Banerjee has gone to another place. What other place? Ah, well, they say, how can one know that? How indeed? How can one know about the movements of such a one as Banerjee? Does he not live a life of absolute seclusion? Does he not? And I say yes. Yes, 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 of course. That is obvious, even to me. I spend all my savings trying to find this Banerjee, and all except for 35 rupees, but it is no good. However, I stay in Rishikesh and make a living by doing ordinary conjuring tricks for small groups and such like. These are the tricks I have learned from Professor Moore, and by nature my sleight of hand is very good. Then one day, there I am sitting in the small hotel in Rishikesh, and again I hear talk of the yogi Banerjee. A traveler is saying how he has heard that Banerjee is now living in the jungle, not so very far away, but in the dense jungle and all alone. But where? The traveler is not sure where. Possibly, he says, it is over there in that direction, north of town. And he points with his finger. Well, that is enough for me. I go to the market and begin to bargain for hiring a tonga, which is a horse and cart, and the transaction is just being completed with the driver, when up comes a man who has been standing listening nearby, and he says that he too is going in that direction. He asks, can he come part of the way with me and share the cost? I answer, delighted, of course, and off we go. The man and me sitting in the cart, and the driver driving the horse. Off we go along a very small path which leads right through the jungle. And then what truly fantastic luck should happen. I am talking to my companion, and I find that he is a disciple of none other than the great Banerjee himself, and that he is going now on a visit to his master. So straight out I tell him that I too would like to become a disciple of the yogi. He turns and looks at me long and slow, and for perhaps 3 minutes he does not speak. Then he says quietly, no, that is impossible. All right, I say to myself, we shall see. Then I ask if it is really true that the Banerjee levitates when he prays. Yes, he says, that is true, but no one is allowed to observe the thing happen. No one is ever allowed to come near the Banerjee when he is praying. So we go on a little further in the tonga, talking all the time about the Banerjee, and I manage by very careful casual questioning to find out a number of small things about him, such as what time of the day he commences with his praying. Then soon the man says, I will leave you here. This is where I dismount. I drop him off, and I pretend to drive along on my journey. But around a corner I tell the driver to stop and wait. Quickly I jump down and sneak back along the road, looking for this man, the disciple of the Banerjee. He is not on the road. Already he has disappeared into the jungle. But which way? Which side of the road? I stand very still and listen. I hear a sort of rustling in the undergrowth. That must be him, I tell myself. If it is not him, then it is a tiger. But it is him. I see him ahead. He is going forward through the thick jungle. There is not even a little path where he is walking, and he is having to push his way between tall bamboo and every kind of heavy vegetation. I creep after him. I keep about 100 yards behind him, because I am frightened he may hear me. I can certainly hear him. It is impossible to proceed in silence through very thick jungle, and when I lose sight of him, which is most of the time, I am able to follow his sound. For about half an hour this tense game of follow the leader goes on. Then suddenly, I can no longer hear the man in front of me. I stop and listen. The jungle is silent. I am terrified that I may have lost him. I creep on a little way, and all at once, through the thick undergrowth, I see before me a little clearing, and in the middle of the clearing are 2 huts. They are small huts built entirely of jungle leaves and branches. My heart jumps, and I feel a great surging of excitement inside me, because this, I know for certain, is the place of the Banerjee, the yogi. The disciple has already disappeared. He must have gone into one of the huts. All is quiet. So now I proceed to make a most careful inspection of the trees and bushes and other things all around. There is a small water-hole beside the nearest hut, and I see a prayer mat beside it, and that, I say to myself, is where the Banerjee meditates and prays. Close to this water-hole, not 30 yards away, there is a large tree, a great spreading baobab tree, with beautiful thick branches which spread in such a way you can put a bed on them and lie on the bed and still not be seen from underneath. That will be my tree. I say to myself, I shall hide in that tree and wait until the Banerjee comes out to pray, and then I will be able to see everything. But the disciple has told me that the time of prayer is not until 5 or 6 in the evening, so I have several hours to wait. Therefore, I at once walk back through the jungle to the road, and I speak to the Tonga driver. I tell him he too must wait. For this I have to pay him extra money, but it doesn't matter now because I'm excited. I don't care about anything for the moment, not even money. And all through the great noontime heat of the jungle I wait beside the Tonga, and on through the heavy, wet heat of the afternoon. And then, as 5 o'clock approaches, I make my way quietly back through the jungle to the hut, my heart beating so I can feel it shaking my whole body. I climb up my tree, and I hide among the leaves in such a way that I can see but not be seen. And I wait. I wait for 45 minutes. A watch? Yes, I have on a wristwatch. I remember it clearly. It was a watch I won in a raffle, and I was proud to own it. On the face of my watch it said the maker's name, the Islamia Watch Company. And so, with my watch, I am careful to be timing everything that goes on, because I want to get every single detail of this experience. I sit up in the tree waiting. Then, all at once, a man is coming out of the hut. The man is tall and thin. He is dressed in an orange-colored dhoti, and he carries before him a tray with brass pots and incense burners. He goes over and sits down cross-legged on the mat by the water-hole, putting the tray on the ground before him, and all the movements that he makes seem somehow very calm and gentle. He leans forward and scoops a handful of water from the pool and throws it over his shoulder. He takes the incense burner and passes it back and forth across his chest, slowly, in a gentle, flowing manner. He puts his hands palm downward on his knees. He pauses. He takes a long breath through his nostrils. I can see him take a long breath, and suddenly I can see his face is changing. There is a sort of brightness coming all over his face, a sort of brightness on his skin, and I can see his face is changing. For 14 minutes he remains quite still in that position, and then as I look at him I see, quite positively, I see his body lifting, slowly, slowly, slowly off the ground. and he is still sitting cross-legged, and his hands palm downward on his knees, and his whole body is lifting slowly off the ground up into the air. Now I can see the daylight underneath him. 12 inches above the ground he is sitting, 15, 18, 20, and soon he is at least 2 feet above the prayer mat. I stay quite still up there in my tree watching, and I keep saying to myself, "Now look carefully, make sure, be certain you are seeing correctly. There before you, 30 yards away, is a man sitting in great serenity upon the air. Are you seeing him? Yes, I am seeing him. But are you sure there is no illusion? Are you sure there is no deception? Are you sure you are not imagining? Are you sure?" "Yes, I'm sure," I say. "I'm sure." I stare at him, marveling. For a long while I keep staring, and then the body is coming slowly down again to earth. I see it coming. I see it moving gently downward, slowly downward, lowering to the earth again until his buttocks rests upon the mat. 46 minutes by my watch it had been suspended. I timed it. And then, for a long, long while, for over 2 hours, the man remains sitting absolutely still, like a stone person, with not the slightest movement. To me it does not seem that he is breathing. His eyes are closed, but still there is this brightness in his face, and also this slightly smiling look, a thing I have not seen on any other face in all my life since then. At last he stirs. He moves his hands. He stands up. He bends down again. He picks up the tray and goes slowly back into the hut. I am wonderstruck. I feel exalted. I forget all caution and climb down quickly from the tree and run straight over to the hut and rush through the door. Banerjee is bending over, washing his feet and hands in a basin. His back is toward me, but he hears me, and he turns quickly and straightens up. There is a great surprise on his face, and the first thing he says is, "How long have you been here?" He says it sharply, like he is not pleased. At once I tell him the whole truth, the whole story about being up in the tree and watching him, and at the end I tell him there is nothing I want in life except to become his disciple. Please, will he let me become his disciple? Suddenly he seems to explode. He becomes furious, and he begins shouting at me. "Get out!" he shouts. "Get out of here! Get out! Get out! Get out!" And in his fury he picks up a small brick, then flings it at me, and it strikes my right leg just below the knee and tears the flesh. I have the scar still. I will show it to you. There, you see? Just below the knee. Banerjee's anger is terrible, and I am very frightened. I turn and run away. I walk through the jungle to where the Tonga driver is waiting. We drive home to Rishikesh, but that night I regain my courage. I make for myself a decision, and it is this, that I will return every day to the hut of the Banerjee, and I will keep on and on at him, until at last he has to take me on as a disciple, just to get himself some peace. This I do. Each day I go to see him, and each day his anger pours out upon me like a volcano, him shouting and yelling, and me standing there frightened, but also obstinate, and repeating always to him my wish to become a disciple. For 5 days it is like this. Then, all at once, on my 6th visit, Banerjee seems to become quite calm, quite polite. He explains he cannot himself take me on as a disciple, but he will give me a note, he says, to another man, a friend, a great yogi, who lives in Hardawar. I am to go there, and I will receive help and instruction. Imran Khan paused and asked me if he might have a glass of water. I fetched it for him. He took a long, slow drink, and then went on with his story. This is in 1922, and I am nearly 17 years old. So I go to Hardawar, and I find the yogi, and because I have a letter from the great Banerjee, he consents to give me instruction. Now what is this instruction? It is, of course, the critical part of the whole thing. It is what I have been yearning for and searching for, so you can be sure I am an eager pupil. The first instruction, the most elementary part, consists of having to practice the most difficult physical exercises, all of them concerned with muscle control and breathing. But after some weeks of this, even the eager pupil becomes impatient. I tell the yogi that it is my mental powers I wish to develop, not my physical ones. He replies, "If you will develop control of your body, then the control of your mind will be an automatic thing. But I want both at once, and I keep asking him, and in the end he says, very well, I will give you some exercises to help you concentrate the conscious mind. Conscious mind, I ask? Why do you say conscious mind? Because each man has two minds, the conscious and the subconscious. The subconscious mind is highly concentrated, but the conscious mind, the one everyone uses, is a scattered, unconcentrated thing. It is concerning itself with thousands of different items, the things you are seeing around you, and the things you are thinking about, so you must learn to concentrate it in such a way that you can visualize at will one item only, and absolutely nothing else. If you work hard at this, you should be able to concentrate your mind, your conscious mind, upon any one subject you select for at least 3.5 minutes, but that will take about 15 years. 15 years, I cry. It may take longer, he says. 15 years is the usual time. But I will be an old man by then. Do not despair, the yogi says. The time varies with different people. Some take 10 years, a few can take less, and on extremely rare occasions a special person comes along who is able to develop the power in only 1 or 2 years, but that is 1 in a million. Who are these special people, I ask? Do they look different from other people? They look the same, he says. A special person might be a humble road sweeper or a factory worker, or he might be a Rajah. There is no way of telling until the training begins. Is it really so difficult, I ask, to concentrate the mind upon a single object for 3.5 minutes? It is almost impossible, he answers. Try it and see. Shut your eyes and think of something. Think of just one object. Visualize it. See it before you. And in a few seconds your mind will start wandering. Other little thoughts will creep in. Other visions will come to you. It is a very difficult thing. Thus spoke the yogi of Hardwar, and so my real exercises begin. Each evening I sit down and close my eyes, and visualize the face of the person I love best, which is my brother. I concentrate upon visualizing his face, but the instant my mind begins to wander, I stop the exercise and rest for some minutes. Then I try again. After 3 years of daily practice, I am able to concentrate absolutely upon my brother's face for 1.5 minutes. I am making progress. But an interesting thing happens. In doing these exercises, I lose my sense of smell absolutely, and never to this day does it come back to me. Then the necessity for earning my living to buy food forces me to leave Hardwar. I go to Calcutta, where there are greater opportunities, and there soon I begin to make quite good money by giving conjuring performances. But always I continue with the exercises. Every evening, wherever I am, I settle myself down in a quiet corner, and practice the concentrating of the mind upon my brother's face. Occasionally I choose something not so personal, like, for an example, an orange or a pair of spectacles, and that makes it even more difficult. One day, I traveled from Calcutta to Dhaka in East Bengal to give a conjuring show at a college there, and while in Dhaka, I happened to be present at a demonstration of walking on fire. There are many people watching. There is a big trench dug at the bottom of a sloping lawn. The spectators are sitting by the hundreds upon the slopes of the lawn, looking down upon the trench. The trench is about 25 feet long. It has been filled with logs and firewood and charcoal, and a lot of paraffin has been poured into it. The paraffin has been lit, and after a while the whole trench has become a smoldering hot furnace. It is so hot that the men who are stoking it are obliged to wear goggles. There is a high wind, and the wind fans the charcoal almost to a white heat. The Indian firewalker then comes forward. He is naked except for a small loincloth, and his feet are bare. The crowd becomes silent. The firewalker enters the trench and walks the whole length of it, over the white hot charcoal. He doesn't stop, nor does he hurry. He simply walks over the white hot coals, and comes out at the other side, and his feet are not even singed. He shows the soles of his feet to the crowd. The crowd stares in amazement. Then the firewalker walks the trench once more. This time he goes even slower, and as he does it I can see on his face a look of pure and absolute concentration. This man, I tell myself, has practiced yoga. He is a yogi. After the performance, the firewalker calls out to the crowd, asking if there is anyone brave enough to come down and walk on the fire. There is a hush in the crowd. I feel a sudden urge of excitement in my chest. This is my chance. I must take it. I must have faith and courage. I must try it. I've been doing my concentration exercises for over 3 years now, and the time has come to give myself a severe test. While I am standing there thinking these thoughts, a volunteer comes forward from the crowd. It is a young Indian man. He announces that he would like to try the fire walk. This decides me, and I also step forward to make my announcement. The crowd gives us both a cheer. Now the real firewalker becomes the supervisor. He tells the other man he will go first. He makes him remove his dhoti, otherwise he says the hem will catch fire from the heat, and the sandals must be taken off. The young Indian does what he is told, but now that he is close to the trench and can feel the terrible heat coming from it, he begins to look frightened. He steps back a few paces, shielding his eyes from the heat with his hands. You don't have to if you don't want to, the real firewalker says. The crowd waits and watches, sensing the drama. The young man, though he is scared out of his wits, wishes to prove how brave he is, and he says, "Of course I'll do it." With that he runs toward the trench. He steps into it with one foot, then the other. He gives a fearful scream and leaps out again and falls onto the ground. The poor man lies there screaming in pain. The soles of his feet are badly burned, and some of the skin has come off right away. 2 of his friends run forward and carry him off. "Now it is your turn," says the firewalker. "Are you ready?" "I am ready," I say, "but please be silent while I prepare myself." A great hush has come over the crowd. They have seen one man get badly burned. Is the second one going to be mad enough to do the same thing? Someone in the crowd shouts, "Don't do it! You must be mad!" Others take up the shout, all telling me to give up. I turn and face them and raise my hands for silence. They stop shouting and stare at me. Every eye in that place is upon me now. I feel extraordinarily calm. I pull my dhoti off over my head. I take off my sandals. I stand there naked except for my underpants. I stand very still and close my eyes. I begin to concentrate my mind. I concentrate on the fire. I see nothing but white-hot coals, and I concentrate on them not being hot, but cold. The coals are cold, I tell myself. They cannot burn me. It is impossible for them to burn me, because there is no heat in them. I allow half a minute to go by. I know that I must not wait too long, because I am only able to concentrate absolutely upon any one thing for a minute and a half. I keep concentrating. I concentrate so hard that I go into a sort of trance. I step out onto the coals. I walk fairly fast the whole length of the trench, and behold! I am not burned. The crowd goes mad. They yell and cheer. The original firewalker rushes up to me and examines the soles of my feet. He can't believe what he sees. There's not a burn mark on them. "Aye!" he cries. "What is this? Are you a yogi?" "I am on the way, sir," I answer proudly. "I am well on the way." After that I dress and I leave quickly, avoiding the crowd. Of course I am excited. It is coming to me, I say. Now at last the power is beginning to come. And all the time I am remembering something else. I am remembering a thing that the old yogi of Hardwar said to me. He said, "Certain holy people have been known to develop so great a concentration that they can see without using their eyes." I keep remembering that saying, and I keep longing for the power to do likewise myself. And after my success with the firewalking, I decide that I will concentrate everything upon this single aim, to see without eyes. For only the second time so far, Imrat Khan broke off his story. He took another sip of water, then he leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. "I am trying to get everything in the correct order," he said. "I don't want to omit anything." "You're doing fine," I told him. "Carry on." "Very well," he said. "So I am still in Calcutta, and I have just had success with my firewalking, and now I have decided to concentrate all my energy on this one thing, which is to see without the eyes. The time has come, therefore, to make a slight change in the exercises. Each night now I light a candle, and I begin by staring at the flame. A candle flame, you know, has 3 separate parts, the yellow at the top, the mauve lower down, and the black right inside. I place the candle 16 inches away from my face. The flame is absolutely level with my eyes. It must not be above or below. It must be dead level, because then I do not have to make even the teeniest adjustment of the eye muscles by looking up or down. I settle myself comfortably, and I begin to stare at the black part of the flame, right in the center. All this is merely to concentrate my conscious mind, to empty it of everything around me. So I stare at the black spot in the flame until everything else around me has disappeared, and I can see nothing else. Then slowly I shut my eyes, and I begin to concentrate, as usual, upon one single object of my choice, which, as you know, is usually my brother's face. I do this every night before bed, and by 1929, when I am 24 years old, I can concentrate upon an object for 3 minutes without any wandering of my mind. So it is now, at this time, when I am 24, that I begin to become aware of a slight ability to see an object with my eyes closed. It is a very slight ability, just a queer little feeling that when I close my eyes and look at something hard with fierce concentration, I can see the outline of the object. Slowly I am beginning to develop my inner sense of sight. You ask me what I mean by that. I will explain it to you exactly as the yogi of Hardwar explained it to me. All of us, you see, have 2 senses of sight, just as we have 2 senses of smell and taste and hearing. There is the outer sense, the highly developed one, which we all use, and there is the inner one also. If only we could develop these inner senses of ours, then we could smell without noses, taste without our tongues, hear without our ears, and see without our eyes. Do you not understand? Do you not see that our noses and tongues and ears and eyes are only, how shall I say it, are only instruments which assist in conveying the sensation itself into the brain? And so it is that I am all the time striving to develop my inner sense of sight. Each night now I perform my usual exercises with the candle flame in my brother's face. After that I rest a little while. I drink a cup of coffee. Then I blindfold myself, and I sit in my chair trying to visualize, trying to see, not just to imagine, but to actually see without my eyes every object in the room. And gradually success begins to come. Soon I am working with a pack of cards. I take a card from the top of the pack and I hold it before me, back to front, trying to see through it. Then, with a pencil in my other hand, I write down what I think it is. I take another card and do the same again. I go through the whole of the pack like that, and when it is over I check what I have written down against the pile of cards beside me. Almost at once I have a 60 to 70% success. I do other things. I buy maps and complicated navigating charts, and pin them up all around my room. I spend hours looking at them blindfolded, trying to see them, trying to read the small lettering of the place names and the rivers. Every evening for the next 4 years I proceed with this kind of practice. By the year 1933, that is only last year, when I am 28 years old, I can read a book. I can cover my eyes completely, and I can read a book right through. So now at last you have it, this power. For certain, I have it now, and at once, because I cannot wait with impatience, I include the blindfold act in my ordinary conjuring performance. The audience loves it. They applaud long and loud, but not one single person believes it to be genuine. Everyone thinks it is just another clever trick, and the fact that I am a conjurer makes them think more than ever that I am faking. Conjurers are men who trick you. They trick you with cleverness. So no one believes me, even when the doctors who blindfolded me in the most expert way refuse to believe that anyone can see without his eyes. They forget there are many other ways of sending an image to the brain. What other ways? I ask him. Quite honestly, I don't know exactly how it is I can see without my eyes. But what I do know is this. When my eyes are bandaged, I am not using my eyes at all. The seeing is done by another part of my body. Which part? I ask him. Any part at all, as long as the skin is bare. For example, if you put a sheet of metal in front of me and put a book behind the metal, I cannot read the book. But if you allow me to put my hand around the sheet of metal so that the hand is seeing the book, then I can read it. Would you mind if I tested you on that? I asked. Not at all, he answered. I don't have a sheet of metal, I said, but the door will do just as well. I stood up and went to the bookshelf. I took down the first book that came to hand. It was Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. I opened the door and asked my visitor to stand behind it, out of sight. I opened the book at random and propped it on a chair on the other side of the room. On the other side of the door. Then I stationed myself in a position where I could see both him and the book. "Can you read the book?" I asked him. "No," he answered, "of course not." "Right. You may now put your hands around the door, but only the hand." He slid his hand around the edge of the door until it was within sight of the book. Then I saw the fingers on the hand parting from one another, spreading wide, beginning to quiver slightly, feeling the air like the antennae of an insect. And the hand turned so that the back of it was facing the book. "Try to read the left page from the top," I said. There was silence for perhaps 10 seconds. Then smoothly, without pause, he began to read. "Have you guessed the riddle yet?" the Hatter asked, turning to Alice again. "No, I give it up," Alice replied. "What's the answer?" "I haven't the slightest idea," said the Hatter. "Nor I," said the March Hare. Alice sighed wearily. "I think you might do something better with the time," she said, "than wasting it in asking riddles that have no answers." "It's perfect!" I cried. "Now I believe you. You are a miracle." I was enormously excited. "Thank you, Doctor," he said gravely. "What you say gives me great pleasure." "One question," I said. "It's about the playing cards. When you held up the reverse side of one of them, did you put your hand around the other side to help you read it?" "You are very perceptive," he said. "No, I did not. In the case of the cards, I was actually able to see through them in some way." "How do you explain that?" I asked. "I don't explain it," he said, "except perhaps that a card is such a flimsy thing. It is so thin, and not like solid metal, or thick like a door. That is all the explanation I can give. There are many things in this world, Doctor, that we cannot explain." "Yes," I say, "there certainly are." "Would you be kind enough to take me home now?" he said. "I feel very tired." I drove him home in my car. That night I didn't go to bed. I was far too worked up to sleep. I had just witnessed a miracle. This man would have doctors all over the world, turning somersaults in the air. He would change the whole course of medicine. From a doctor's point of view, he must be the most valuable man alive. We doctors must get a hold of him and keep him safe. We must look after him. We mustn't let him go. We must find out exactly how it is that an image can be sent to the brain without using the eyes. And if we do that, then blind people will be able to see, and deaf people might be able to hear. Above all, this incredible man must not be ignored and left to wander around India, living in cheap rooms and playing in second-rate theaters. I got so steamed up thinking about that, after a while, I grabbed a notebook and a pen and started writing down with great care everything that Imrat Khan told me that evening. I used the notes I had made while he was talking. I wrote for 5 hours without stopping, and at 8 o'clock the next morning, when it was time to go to the hospital, I had finished the most important part, the pages you have just read. At the hospital that morning, I didn't see Dr. Marshall until we met in the doctor's restroom during our tea break. I told him as much as I could in the 10 minutes we had to spare. "I'm going back to the theater tonight," I said. "I must talk to him again. I must persuade him to stay here. We mustn't lose him now." "I'll come with you," Dr. Marshall said. "Right," I said. "We'll watch the show first, then we'll take him out to supper." At 6:45 that evening, I drove Dr. Marshall in my car to Acadia Road. I parked the car, and the two of us walked over to the Royal Palace Hall. "There's something wrong," I said. "Where is everybody?" There was no crowd outside the hall, and the doors were closed. The poster advertising the show was still in place, but I now saw that someone had written across it in large printed letters, using black paint, the words, "Tonight's performance cancelled." There was an old gatekeeper standing by the locked doors. "What happened?" I asked him. "Someone died," he said. "Who?" I asked, knowing already who it was. "The man who sees without his eyes," the gatekeeper answered. "How did he die?" I cried. "When? Where?" "They say he died in his bed," the gatekeeper said. "He went to sleep and never woke up. These things happen." We walked slowly back to the car. I felt an overwhelming sense of grief and anger. I should have never allowed this precious man to go home last night. I should have kept him. I should have given him my bed and taken care of him. I shouldn't have let him out of my sight. Imrat Khan was a maker of miracles. He had communicated with mysterious and dangerous forces that are beyond the reach of ordinary people. He had also broken all the rules. He had performed miracles in public. He had taken money for doing so. And worst of all, he had told some of these secrets to an outsider. Me. Now he was dead. "So that's that," Dr. Marshall said. "Yes," I said, "it's over. Nobody will ever know how he did it. This is a true and accurate report of everything that took place concerning my 2 meetings with Imrat Khan. Signed, John F. Cartwright, M.D., Bombay, December 4th, 1934. So that was part 2 of the wonderful story of Henry Sugar. Thank you for listening to Cocoa Club today. Next week, tune in so that you can hear part 3, where we'll learn what Mr. Henry Sugar does with this book that he's just read. I'm Mrs. Sam. I appreciate everybody giving us a listen today. I hope your sugar cookies turned out well, and I'd love to hear what you thought of the story on facebook.com/Hotchkiss Library. All of the sounds in this recording are from freesound.com.